Good evening. Welcome to the September 28th, 2020 Merrimack School Board Special Meeting. Please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I'd like to briefly turn it over to Board Member Rothaus.
Good evening. Welcome. I deeply appreciate all the candidates who have come forward tonight to serve our community as a school board member. Due to the fact, and facts are stubborn things, that my father, Paul Goodrich, has submitted his name as an application for the vacant seat, I'm going to recluse myself from the interview process and voting. Please note that Merrimack needs volunteers and community members who care, and I'm grateful for all of you who stepped up to serve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Turn it off.
In addition, Vice Chair Barnes will participate via conference call. The meeting proceedings will follow RSA 91-A:2, which states that all parties must contemporaneously be able to hear and speak to each other. The meeting should be audible to the public, all persons present must be identified, and all votes must be taken by roll call vote. Vice Chair Barnes.
Yes.
Why is your attendance not reasonably practical?
In accordance with the board's temporary emergency policy on travel guidance for students and staff, I must quarantine for 14 days based on travel I made outside of New England.
Thank you. Second, where are you located?
I am in my home in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I'm located in my library with behind closed doors, and no one is in the room with me.
Okay, and that was my third question. Are you in the presence of anyone? And you answered that, so thank you. The next item on the agenda is to interview candidates for school board member vacancy. What we have are 6 candidates that have stepped up. I would like to echo Board Member Rothaus's statements of how much we appreciate the interest from the community, and especially during such a difficult time. The candidates that we have here today are Carl Bienis, Paul Goodrich, Jenna Hardy, Jenna Poison, Patricia Teden, Wolfram Bunchun. We also had 2 candidates that originally submitted, Tanique Lenderman and Mackenzie Murphy, and they have since withdrawn their interest. The interviews that we will conduct today will last approximately 15 minutes. We're going to try to stick as close to that as possible so that each candidate has a fair amount of time to speak, as well as to be able to wrap up in a timely manner. What we will do is I have every candidate's name in this box. So we'll randomly draw the candidates, and we will ask you to come up to this table right here, where we will ask you to briefly introduce yourself and express why you are interested in running or putting your name, why you are interested in filling this position. And then we will go through a series of questions that we will ask you from the board. Lastly, upon the completion of those interviews, we will deliberate and appoint a board member that will fill this vacancy until the next election cycle. The first school board meeting will be October 5th, which is next Monday at 7 p.m. So who's ever appointed, we would ask that you would be able to attend there. Our school district clerk is also scheduled to be at that meeting prior to the meeting to be able to swear you in. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. The first person that I'd like to ask to come up is Patricia Teden. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, great. Thanks.
I have a form here, but it sounds like you have enough questions that
If you have something you'd like to give us, please feel free. Thank you very much. Okay, if you'd like to introduce yourself and express why you're interested in the position. Yes, and before you speak, just make sure you push that button so the green light illuminates.
Oh, no, it illuminates more.
We hear you.
Okay. My name is Patricia Teeden. I've lived in Merrimack for 6 years. I'm at a point in my life where I'm closing down my consulting business and find myself with time and energy. And I think time and energy is in short supply with especially parents of young children who are coping with COVID and school schedules and all of the challenges going on with most people. So I would like to, and I tend to go for hard challenges, and these are hard challenge times. So I thought this would be a really good outlet for my energies. I do not have a child in the school system. Nor do I have Board of Education experience in the past, but I have very deep business skills. And I have created many organizations that pull together stakeholders who don't agree at all to move issues forward. And I think those skills would be helpful.
Board Member Schneider, we will go ahead and start with you.
Me first? Okay. So just to let you know and everybody else, I've got a list of questions. I'm going to ask the same questions of all the candidates so there's consistency. So just, and I'll maybe mix the order up so you won't know what's coming next. So I guess the first question, anybody that knows me know that budget is always the thing that I worry about the most. So based on what you know about the budget discussions that have gone on in Merrimack, what are your thoughts about the budget? And in particular, how do you believe that the impacts of the pandemic and what we've had to go through sort of impact the way we view the budget?
Well, I have to admit I haven't examined the budget in detail. I would imagine that there are some savings, but more expenditures moving forward, and a little bit of discomfort about what the state might be able to help with because of revenue losses at the state level. And I'm not sure how all that would work out, by the time you jiggled all the numbers through.
So I guess a sort of a follow-on question to that is, excuse me, so in a normal school year, we have budget that we do for programs, transportation, and all that kind of stuff. There are challenges now with remote learning and technology and things like that. How do you think, from a budget perspective, we should look into the future, not only for this year, into the future? Do you think it's changed the dynamics of what we from a budgeting perspective, need to budget for future school years?
I definitely think it's different, that there would be a greater focus on the technology and to make sure that each child has access to technology to be able to keep up their schooling regardless of what's happening in the greater world. I don't think that there are too many places in Merrimack where broadband is not available, but there may be many families who can't afford it, and that should be removed as an impediment to a public education.
Okay. I'm good.
Shannon?
Thank you very much. Pat, what district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and or a parent?
Could somebody repeat
Yeah.
that?
What district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer or a parent?
As a taxpayer, the quality of the schools is hugely important. I've moved many times in my life. In fact, there was one time I moved into I had just a few days to organize a move, and I pulled a realtor aside and said, what town in the area has the best schools? I'm buying a house there at the end of the week. Can you clear your calendar? So school quality has always been how I have selected where I live. I guess I have a little more leeway on that now that I don't have a child in a public school. I'm a big supporter of public schools, but I think they directly relate to real estate prices and the stability of that pricing. As a parent, I would want to make sure that the school had challenging courses for my child. I am the grandmother of an 8-year-old who is taking classes well above his grade level and a 12-year-old who has Downs. So they get excellent attention from their public schools. And that's a big range of talents and challenges. And I very much appreciate the town that they live in and their ability to handle and do right by both of my grandkids.
Okay. I have a question. My question is, are you currently serving an elected role or in a community leadership position? If so, do you plan to continue in this or these roles should you be appointed to the school board?
I have roles in which I've been voted in, but I wouldn't call them big elections. So there are 2 organizations in which I'm active. One is Merrimack Friends and Family, and I'm on my 3rd board stint with them. I run their service projects. I'm director of services. So primarily those are the good works in a service organization, half social, half service organization. And that's strictly a nonpartisan group. And I am chair of the Merrimack Democratic Committee in town. That's an election of 15 people who show up at a meeting to vote. So I suppose it is an election. And I realize that may not be a good hit for lots of people in the audience. I do want to assure you that I'm not a flamethrower. I'm an even-tempered person. I don't go bungee jumping off of left and right worlds and reacting strongly. And as evidence, I just encourage you to look at the Merrimack Dem page. And I probably do 80% of the posts on that page. And they're all announcing events and congratulating people and thanking Lynn Christensen for running a great election. And it's positive stuff. I don't get into the meanness in social media. I'm very careful in what I say and how I say it.
Okay. Angie, back to you.
Excuse me. So we're one elected board from the school board. We work to help run the school district. There's another board in town, which is the town council, which helps run the town.
Yeah.
How do you see the relationship between, not how it is, but how do you think the relationship should be in terms of cooperation between the school and the town when it comes to the elected boards?
Well, clearly cooperation's the name for any set of people who are trying to do right by their town.
Let me just clarify. What sort of things would you like the 2 boards to potentially collaborate on or work together on to maybe make things sort of appear more as one with the town versus 2 separate entities?
I would think that investments in new capital investments should be agreed by both organizations to make sure, since that's tapping into the taxpayer base which is a big concern for both of the organizations. operating funds, hiring, any big planning ahead projections for all the new houses going in town and the new apartments and the impact on the schools, to make sure that you have a plan to move forward and agree on what that plan is, that you're not working under different assumptions and therefore heading in different directions.
Okay.
It's singing the same song
Okay.
to the public.
Shannon?
Thank you. Based on, actually, I'll go to this one instead. How do you see your role as it relates to working with parents who have questions about district issues?
So the question is, how do you see your role in relating to parents that have questions about district issues?
As a communicator, if I don't know the answer, I run around and figure it out. Find out who does know the answer, find out if it's fuzzy or if it's firm, and be able to, or if it's not going to be made for a certain point in the future, and make that clear to whoever asked the question. So I wouldn't want to be hugely definitive if it's something that's still under discussion, but make sure that I can give them the status as it stands there and then follow up as the status changes.
Okay.
And also ask them what's important to them, because there could be great feedback into the decision-making process.
Okay. I have my next question is, give me an example where you've attempted to make a positive change in our schools, whether it was a communication with a school board member, a suggestion for perhaps the superintendent, or if you have, for those that might have kids in the schools, for a teacher. And if there's not an example that relates specifically to the schools, give me another example of a proactive outreach that you've made to try to impact positive change in something that's important to you.
Let's see, I haven't been in Merrimack a huge amount of time.
Yeah, and feel free to take a second. Unfortunately, you got the first round of questions,
Yeah.
so others can kind of think through this. So if you need just a minute.
Maybe I can come up with little things, and these are, again, the service projects that are performed by Merrimack Friends and Family to make sure that, there's a number of those projects where it's very important that the recipient has anonymity. So making sure that those processes have been modified a bit to assure that anonymity. Yeah, nothing directly with the schools, actually, because my kids aren't here and they're grown.
Yeah, that's okay.
So nothing directly there.
So we're about at 15 minutes. So I'm going to go. Andy, do you have any other questions that you want to make sure that you ask?
Well, I guess one question sort of following on yours about elected positions. So as you know, this position is for essentially 6 months to cover between now and the election in April.
Yes.
Is it your intent to consider, when the election happens in April, if you're selected to be on the board, to run for the remaining position as you go through, or do you see this as doing this for only 6 months to sort of help the board out through here?
So the choices had. What is the outside influence? So well,
I'll just clarify, and this is for the logistics of what goes on. So we're talking now about filling a seat for the
Yes.
remainder of this year until the April elections.
Yes.
At that point in time, there will be an open election for whoever's term normally expires, plus the remaining year on this seat that's being filled. Do you see yourself at that point in time wanting to consider, if you're named to the board, wanting to run for that?
Oh, absolutely.
From an election
Yes.
position, or
Yes.
because the two options you have are to stay for 6 months and not run, or have aspirations to continue on the board longer term.
Now, my inclination is to say, this is a great thing. It's 6 months to test myself so that I could have impact and be making a positive change, positive impact on the board and on the, what the schools are requiring of the board, and then continuing that. So I think it's probably a great way to to join the board.
Okay. Good.
And Shannon, do you have any other questions that you want to be sure to ask?
Yes. So what are your thoughts on district issues being discussed by individual school board members on local social media sites?
So what is your position on school board topics being discussed on local social media sites? I believe was the question. By a school board member? Is that correct, Shannon?
That's correct.
I haven't tracked it to the school board members. What I do try to keep up with is how the parents are doing with the different, in school, out school, how they're making peace with the choices and any future changes that may happen to the school system as students become infected, or faculty members or whoever else in the school community. So that, I think that is my main focus, is to keep a sense of what the public is saying.
Okay.
So I haven't followed individual school board members and their posts
Okay.
on social media.
And then one quick kind of question for me is, in addition to the work that we do on the budgets and our regular school board meetings, we have a number of different committee assignments that meet in various times throughout the week, sometimes during the day. Are you able to, on occasion, it doesn't happen very often, I can tell you, but are you able to meet during 9 to 5 hours?
Yes.
Yes,
I
and
am.
understand that there's extra committee assignments in addition to some of our other.
I have been told the committees take more time than the board.
Was that?
I've been told the committees take more time than the board members, than the board meetings themselves.
Sometimes. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And then real quick, do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so. I thank
Okay.
you very much for considering my candidacy for somebody who's not an educator but has an interest in Merrimack's success and is a proponent of public education.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish I had prizes to give away, but it's not that exciting. Just trying to come up with a fair way to do. The second person up is Jenna Hardy. Again, if you could make sure that the microphone is on, you would see the green light illuminated. Take a moment to introduce yourself and explain to us why you're interested in the position.
Okay. My name is Jenna Hardy. I have lived here in Merrimack for most of my life. Took a quick break when I graduated from college to when I had children, but when we had children, we decided to move back to Merrimack specifically because I had my first experience with the Merrimack School District was as a student, and I absolutely loved being a student here. My sisters also went to school here. They were both super successful. So I had a comfort level and a trust with this school district, so we decided to move back here. I am a teacher by training. I have my master's degree in education. I taught in public school. I started my career actually in Merrimack as a Title I tutor, but at the time teaching jobs were super competitive and there was no full-time job for me here, so I ended up teaching in Windham for a few years before I had children. My husband and I moved back to Merrimack the year before my son started kindergarten, just in time for him to start school. So he started his career here and he is going to be a senior, or he is a senior actually right now. He is a senior. So I have 13 years of experience with this school district. I also have a freshman, an 8th grader, and a 2nd grader, and they keep me very, very involved. I left teaching when I had my son, and I have been involved in this school district as a substitute as well. I have volunteered. I tried to list it. It actually became kind of hard. I've been a room mom. I have been, let's see, where's my list? Oh, room mom, book fair sales, school store at JMU's, field days, ice cream sales at the middle school. I've helped to plan soccer nights, senior nights for the soccer team. My kids are involved in multiple activities in the school district. They've been involved in soccer, theater, chorus, band. So I'm not just a sports parent, I'm an arts parent. I'm a robotics mom now that my son is into that. And we've been involved in those activities, both volunteering, helping to support those communities. And through those things, I have met pretty much every friend I have. As a parent, as you know, that's how you make your friends. And so I have a wide variety of friends with a wide variety of children and concerns. They become your friends and you talk about things in the school district and you get a sense of what's working for them and what's not and how it's different from what's working for me and what's not. I also have students at the high school that are in honors level classes. I also have a student on an IEP. So I understand the various needs of students, how we have to provide adequate challenge, but also adequate support depending on the needs of students. So in addition, I'm going to address one of your questions actually early. I believe that the fact that I ran for the budget committee this year and won the most votes out of the 10 candidates that were running also speaks to the fact that I have earned the trust of voters and community support. I've spoken to many of my supporters from that election and asked how they would feel about me assuming this seat if I were to be appointed, and they were all very supportive, which made me feel confident in moving forward. If I were to be appointed to the school board, I would obviously resign my seat on the budget committee. The good news is, having sat through the process for appointing people for that, there is a good collection of people that are willing to step up and fill an available seat. So I feel comfortable with that. I just believe, because of my years of experience with this school district and my existing relationships within the school district, leadership, and the community, that I would be uniquely positioned to join the school board at this incredibly critical time as we face unprecedented challenges. My goal is to use my background in education and my years of experience here in Merrimack to work alongside all of you and our administration to lead the Merrimack School District for the benefit of our students, our staff, our families, our community. And I'm just very grateful for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and start with Andy.
Okay, so this is you probably have input on this question given your current role, but so I guess the question I have is around the budget part is, what are your thoughts overall on the current school budget, and how do you think it's going to evolve or be impacted by what we're needing to do to address the pandemic situation and the sort of change of teaching style?
Yeah. Just grabbing a number out of the air, Merrimack's cost per student is pretty close to average in the state of New Hampshire. So I feel like we're doing a good job of making sure that kids are provided for, but we're not spending an exorbitant amount of money to do that. I think Merrimack has always been one of those schools that's like, okay, we're gonna do what needs to be done, but we're not gonna go berserk crazy bananas on anything. And I feel like there's always been a pretty decent balance there, which has kept us pretty solidly in the average spending zone. I think this year is going to provide a tremendous amount of challenge. I think, like Pat said, there'll be areas where we're certainly probably saving a little bit of money, but I don't think we're going to be saving the kind of money that people think we're going to be saving. And I think we're also probably going to be incurring costs due to completely unforeseen events that none of us could have ever anticipated. And I'd like to believe that the town of Merrimack, I know that the people here struggle with the tax burden, there's no doubt at all. But I also know that in this situation, I'd like to think that as a community, we would say, we need to do what needs to be done. That's not a blank check, but that we need to prioritize certain things and make sure that certain things are unequivocally provided for. Health and safety of students is what I'm talking about when I say that.
Okay. I'm good,
Okay.
thanks.
Shannon?
Thank you. What district initiatives, I'm going to just go in the same order as I did last time. What district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and or a parent?
So right now as a parent, I would say, the focus of our school leadership on social, emotional learning and that initiative, I feel like we were ahead of the curve on making sure that our teachers were trauma informed and working to provide for the social and emotional needs of our students. Who'd have known that would be one of the most important things we could have done for our school community and our students going into this? I mean, collectively as a society, we are experiencing a trauma, and the way it impacts families and students is really incredible, and it's in a lot of cases very devastating. So I think that has been an incredible gift that our teachers had that training and that knowledge up front, and they already knew how to respond in ways so when school started this year, they could begin with the comfort and the routines and the education of school, but they could do it with that trauma-informed basis beneath them. And then I can't even begin to scratch the surface of my next thing, but honestly, I don't know if we'd call this an initiative, but the response of our school district to balance the health and safety aspects of this pandemic while not compromising the education of our students, to me, is the number one thing we have to be able to do and do well, or we're gonna look back with some regret later.
Okay. You had answered the one question that I had, the first one, but I will go ahead and move to my second one, which is to give me an example where you attempted to make a positive change in our schools. Have you proactively reached out, albeit to a teacher, a principal, an administrator, a school board member? And then if you haven't made that kind of proactive outreach within our schools, if you could just give me an example of another example of something that has been important to you where you were proactive about trying to affect positive change.
Sure. So I'm pretty sure that my children, my husband, and possibly people within the school district would wish that I would not try to advocate for positive change sometimes. When I see an issue, generally I try to solve it. And generally those issues have cropped up that have been, I don't want to say private, but just, issues that my children had in a particular situation. And I have always gone to advocate on the behalf of my own children, but generally the issues that are involving my children also impact other kids, or it's, with a particular teacher or coach or something. And I've always gone to bat not only for my own child, but for the other children that are affected. I'm actually almost hesitant to bring this one up, but this is one where I don't want to say I failed, but I was active in helping to bring the initiative for the turf field to the voters. Now, that I did that because I felt there was a problem in our community with a lack of field space. And I felt like nobody's doing anything about it. So myself and a group of parents got together. We found a solution for the problem, and we worked to get that issue to go out in front of the voters. That was my mission in that. My mission was that would to go out in front of the voters, not that I would get my way and win this turf field. It was that the voters would get a chance to say. And they did. They said no. And they said no, and we said, okay. And we went away. But I felt at the time, as a sports parent, we had a critical field shortage. I still feel that way, but we have a critical field shortage, and I tried to propose a solution that I thought could benefit our school community and our community at large if the taxpayers were willing to invest in that. They ultimately said no, and I respect that completely.
Andy, back to you.
So my second question, same as the last time. How do you see the relationship between the school board and the town council in terms of where opportunities are, how they are functioning today, and sort of how you think it should be in terms of the two bodies working together?
So I have to admit, I actually don't know what level the school board and the town council work together at this moment. What I will say is, I hope that as the town council is giving permission for growth in this town, that there is some consultation with the school board and the administration as to what the impacts will be for the school community and obviously the budget, which will then go up when there's, more children moving into town. If we're building apartment buildings and that goes up, those things have impact on our school district. And I would like to think, and I don't know the answer, maybe this already happens, but I would like to think there is some collaboration there. There's some, question asking, and there's some, hey, this proposal is coming up and it's going to have impacts for our school district. What do you all think if there's conversations? If that's not happening, I think that's pretty critical myself.
Shannon?
Thank you. And then how do you see your role as it relates to working with parents who have questions about issues they have with the district?
So I feel like I do this unofficially anyways, actually, it's just as a parent who is involved in the school district. Obviously parents talk and they, so I would see my role as to listen. Kind of like with my children, I feel like whenever they come home and they say, Mom, this happened at school, I always say to teachers, I'll believe 50% of what my kids say to me about you if you do the same for me in return. And I kind of, not saying I don't want to believe people, but what I will do is I'll listen, I'll seek to learn the whole story. And then if that's something that I can help with or be involved with or advocate for, I will do the best that I can do. Or I will say, I'm not sure I can help you, but I'm going to try to find somebody who can.
Okay. And then my last question is if you could just tell me a little bit about your schedule. So just trying to make sure that the candidates have awareness that there's the committee work, and would you have the flexibility for committee work outside of the regular school board meetings, which could possibly include some daytime, dates and times?
Yes, daytime is my best time of day because I'm not currently a stay-at-home mom. So daytime is fantastic. Nighttime, thankfully, I have some extra drivers in my house. It should be fine. I don't anticipate an issue.
Okay. Andy?
Yeah, so my last question is sort of as I explained before, because this is for 6 months. Is your vision to fill the gap for 6 months and sort of stop, or do you intend, if you are in this position, to consider your somebody needs to run. There we go. It's really bad. It's like meetings at work. You
Was
sit
it something
there
I said?
Nobody moves. No, it's anyway. So is it your intent at the end of the 6-month period that if you were on the board, that you would run again to try to continue your term or tenure, if you will?
Yes, my intention would be to run. Yes.
Shannon, do you have another question?
I'll go with my final question, and that is, what are your thoughts on district issues being discussed by school board members on local social media sites?
I feel like this question was made for me, actually. So my feelings on that are, my husband would love it if you would please appoint me so that I would have a reason to stop. I think that if I was on the school board, I would have to follow the wonderful example that you all set, and I would have to probably only chime in on matters of clarity and otherwise just stay out of it.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us before we wrap?
I don't think I do. Thank
right.
you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
All right. Thank you for your time. Paul Goodridge is next. Yep. Thank you. And just like the others, if you could just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and let us know why you're interested.
Is this on? Okay. I come before you with a unique experience. I've been on the Merrimack School Board for 9 years. I served during a time when we were experiencing a 12% increase in student population. We passed 5 bond issues. We passed the addition of the Smith gym, after a bond issue had been passed. I was a party to the writing of the first school board policy. Prior to that time, we had to review past minutes to make sure that we had a consistent policy, and there are a number of accomplishments while I was on the school board. I'm proud of those. I was a founder of the MYA. In 1968, went before the school board, got permission to start a basketball program in the high school gym, which is now the all-purpose room at the middle school. I was a party to the construction of a ball field at Twin Bridges. On Saturday, April 27th, 1968, a beautiful spring day, 2 significant events took place in Merrimack, one good and one bad. The good one was the construction of the Little League field at Twin Bridges. Dick Belleville and I had gone to the Conservation Commission to get permission to build a ball field there. Their only restriction was that we do no damage to the Babosic Brook. I coached and umpired at that field for a number of years. My sons played there, my grandsons played there, and my great-grandsons will play there next year. That's a tremendous legacy. The bad happened later that afternoon when the Turkey Hill Bridge burned. It was destroyed by fire. By the time the fire department got there, it was well in. I went to that fire and fought the blaze. Soon after that, I became a volunteer fireman in the Merrimack Department. The MYA came about because of the school board. Very few people know that. When we went to the school board for permission to use the gym for a basketball program, they stipulated one very important requirement. We had to have insurance for the program. Frank O'Gara was a former member of the board. He was an insurance agent for Slosby, and he said that he would provide the insurance. And that caused 2 problems. One, we had to be a formal organization, and second, we needed money. So Dick and I organized a meeting at the town hall of the baseball coaches and other interested parties to adopt a set of bylaws, and that set of bylaws is still pretty much in place today after 50 years. The Merrimack Youth Association, probably one of the shining stars for Merrimack, and I'm proud that I was the person that made that happen. When we scheduled the meeting, the purpose was to name the organization, to adopt a set of bylaws, to elect a slate of officers, and that was accomplished. Dick Belleville was the first president. We included a registration fee of $6 intended to pay for the cost of insurance. At the annual town meeting, the following year, I believe it was, we asked the town to provide 50% of the support and that the MYA would provide the other 50%. In 1970, the town provided in their budget $3,500 for the MYA. During my 9 years on the board, I had the opportunity to work with some outstanding people. Names that you may not know, names that you may know. I'm not going to name them. There are others that were challenging. I find that sometimes when people come to serve on the board and they have their personal agenda, they lose sight of what their purpose on the board is. School board members must do what is right for the community, not what they want. I have a couple examples where I had to vote against some of the things my friends wanted. When we opened Thornton's Ferry School, my children had to transfer from Mastacola to Thornton's Ferry. And I can tell you the people on Beacon Drive were not too happy. So it's difficult to make those kind of decisions. While I was on the school board, we implemented metrics to control the cost. We used cost per student, cost per square foot, cost per classroom. We wanted to ensure that the elementary schools were being funded at the same level and that the year-to-year budget commission changes were consistent. One of the things that we did to ensure equal tax rates, we went to the town and asked for the new assessment, what it was going to be, and we multiplied that times the current tax rate and said that's the limit on our spending. Sometimes we had to go back to the principals and say, how are you going to bring your requirements down to meet this level of funding? One of the things that we did while we were experiencing this rapid growth is we looked at alternatives. One was trailers, and that didn't go very far. The other was we looked at year-round school systems. We looked at the advantages and disadvantages of implementing year-round schools in Merrimack. Our final decision said no. We also looked at building a high school with Bedford. Back at that time, Merrimack, Bedford, and Hudson were this school district. Claude Levitt was the superintendent of schools for all three school boards. As school board members, we toured and inspected every school building every year. I wrote every bus schedule, every bus route with Orrin Cornell before it was approved. I sincerely thank you for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay, thank you. So Auntie?
So first, candidly, having moved to Merrimack in 1968, I've experienced almost everything that you said has occurred. So it was kind of really interesting to hear. And you've never lived till you've ridden a bus driven by Orrin Cornell. So,
Yes.
My first question is, obviously the budgets back then compared to what they are now are dramatically different. What you know about the budgets today, what do you think the concerns or the areas we should address around the budget? And do you think the pandemic is going to change the way that we should look at the budgets moving forward?
The pandemic is a problem that I would not have liked to face. You know, what you people are going through today to maintaining a excellent educational system is extremely difficult. I don't think that, as far as the budgets are concerned, they're no different than they were 50 years ago. You still got to have janitors, you still got to have classroom facilities, you still got to maintain those facilities. You got teachers' salaries, and that is probably one of the major expenses that you're going to have, and that was 50 years ago, same today. You know, we tried to be competitive, but we did not want to be number one. You know, we tried to stay at a rate where we could retain teachers, and we were not losing them to other districts. But that's a judgment call. Actually, one year, we negotiated the contract. The school board did the negotiations. Rather than hire a professional, we did it ourselves. We had a gentleman's agreement with the Teachers Association that they would not bring in a professional. Well, they did. We walked out. And we ended up getting a good contract. But you have to be willing to fight when it's the time to do so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's
Shannon?
Yes. What district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and/or a parent, and obviously at this point, grandparent and great-grandparent?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
What tax initiatives are most important to you as a parent or grandparent, great-grandparent? Did I get that right, Shannon?
Most important to me right
What
now,
district initiatives are we doing that are most important to you in your roles as a taxpayer and as a grandparent at this point?
What education initiatives are
one
important?
of the things that I ask is, why are we 58th in the quality schools, great schools? We're number 58. Do better than that. I was a math teacher. I'm disappointed at the math scores. We can do better than that. I think that you got to find who is your best teacher in each school and let them become a mentor to the other teachers. Why are they successful and somebody else isn't? Look at those things. I think outside the box. I'm not unwilling to challenge anything.
And then my question is, are you currently serving in an elected role or any community leadership positions? And then if so, do you plan to continue in this or these roles?
No, I'm not in any elected role. And to answer your questions about coming on after this term is up, I would defer and see how this board is working, how well, we can work together. Can I contribute to the goals that you have? If I think I can do that, I probably run. Otherwise, I won't.
Auntie, back to you.
so he answered my last question. But the other question I have is, and I'm really curious as your answer to this because you've been around a while. How do you see the school board and the town council in terms of working together? How they're working together? If you know anything about it, and where you think there could be some improvements in the way we jointly work together?
I have to think back on that. When I was on the school board, there was the town council, there was a member of the council that I was a very good friend with. And he was constantly upset with the school district because we had our meeting before the town. And he was always accusing us of taking all the money. So I don't think I'd have that problem today because I have good relations with the members of the town council. In fact, one of them is my son-in-law.
Never seen him before. Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
Shannon?
Thank you. How do you see your role as it relates to working with parents that have questions about district issues? Like they're trying to navigate the school.
I think the parents have an opportunity to express their opinion, but the school board has to do what's correct in light for the town of Merrimack and for the school district. You can't let parents decide how you're going to do things.
Okay. My question is, please give me an example of where you attempted to make a positive change in our schools. Have you proactively reached out to make a difference? And if not directly within the Merrimack schools, please give me another example where you've been proactive about something that's important to you.
I have been a coach. I coach basketball. I coach the freshman basketball team in Merrimack. Sports is a very important part to me. I introduced the wrestling program. My son is the first state champion in wrestling. I think that I learned that music and art are an extremely important part of the educational system. At one time, I didn't believe that, and now I do. So I think that it's not only the football program or the girls' softball program or whatever, but we've got to look at all of the things that we can do to make it attractive to our children, make them want to compete, make them want to be better in their school.
Auntie?
He answered my last question, so I think
Okay.
Shannon's
Shannon?
got the last one.
So the only question I have left was, what are your thoughts on district issues being discussed by school board members on local social media pages?
I'm sorry,
So what are your thoughts on local issues being discussed on social media by school board members?
I'm not a fan of social media.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And then my question was just really more of the housekeeping one, which is, do you have the ability to participate in extra committees or during the day between the hours of 9 and 5 occasionally?
Yes.
Okay. Those are all the questions that we have. Do you have any questions for us?
How open-minded are you? Are you willing to think outside the box?
Yep.
Let me give you an idea, and I'm not suggesting it happen here. School district in North Carolina, the seniors drive the school buses. They take the bus home at night, and they pick up the kids in the morning, and then they take the kids back that evening and keep the bus at their home. That school built a swimming pool. They ran dinners where the health classes or the home economics classes were the ones doing the cooking. The math classes did the accounting, and they had those kids involved in the school system. And I'm saying, what can we do? How many openings do you have right now for food service? Have you ever thought of using the high school seniors to fill in? You're looking for bus drivers. I'm not sure that we want high school kids driving buses in Merrimack,
Not my kid, but that's just saying.
you know? But there's opportunities that we can challenge the way we do things. We don't have to do it the way we did 50 years ago.
You are correct. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Thank you for your time.
You bet.
Have good luck in going forward this year.
Thank you. Wolfram Bunch. You probably know the drill by now, but if you can make sure the light's on and just give us a brief introduction and the reasons why you're interested in running.
Sure. Good evening, Ms. McLaughlin. So my name is Wolfram von Schön. Most people just go by Wolf because everything else is not pronounceable. I moved to Merrimack 5 years ago. I have two teenagers in high school. I live on 4 Conservation Drive. I think That's something that normally is being asked, so I figure I'm going to share that. I've been an executive manager for the most part of my career. Well, not the most part, but the most part of the last 20 years. am privileged to lead teams, in a sizable headcount. I'm a degreed engineer, automation engineer by trade. As such, I have 20 years of capital equipment experience, project experience. So, like construction projects and contractor management and awards of contracts and requests for proposals and scope reviews. I believe there's a little bit of value I can provide on that end, but I don't think that's why we're here tonight. Educational experience, I have established training academies at 3 of my last employers to train internal and external resources with internal knowledge and product knowledge. In certification programs, I have taught master's and bachelor degree classes at a university in Germany for 4 semesters actually. Mostly in the business and automation world. As such, I have learned what matters in a student in front of a teacher, in front of a college teacher, and what works and what doesn't. So that was eye-opening, the level of student I got as a college teacher. Taught me a thing or two about what's important to be taught in school. Also taught lab classes at the college that I studied myself in Germany. I'm a parent of 2 students that went through schooling in Pennsylvania, public schools for several years, a charter school in Pennsylvania for 1 year, public schools in Switzerland for 2 years, and then again, private and public schools here in Merrimack. When we moved here, we didn't know where we were going to find a house. The housing market was hot at the time already, so we didn't want to lock the school district down. So we had 2 years in the private school sector, and then the last 5, actually since we moved to Merrimack, then 4.5 years in public schools. I also have obviously personal experience of schooling in Germany, and I draw a lot of conclusions out of that experience, seeing what my students bring home as knowledge and as assignments, and how they're being taught and how they're being given assignments to. And I compare that with my own experiences and their experiences in Switzerland, and some is great, some is not so great. So I believe that there's something that I can bring to the table as well. Public service experience, you're going to ask me that. Is there any other office that I hold in town? Yes, I'm an MVD commissioner. I think that's common knowledge. And my seat is up next year for election. And I do plan to run again. I'll disclose that right away. But there will not be any conflicts because MVD the other commissioners have already committed to adjust their schedule, the monthly meeting schedule, to the school board meeting schedules. Why am I running for this position? Why I'm asking for your vote for an appointment is I believe that the schools are doing an excellent job in many ways. We have made very, very good experiences with teachers, counselors, administrators. Everybody has their heart in it. I have no doubt about that. Everybody means well. Everybody is extremely passionate about what they're doing. I've also seen some things that I don't agree with, and I feel that I can help with that, and I would like to help with that. It's my goal to help. And sometimes help comes in form of questions and challenges, right? And maybe even disagreement. And that's really what I urge you to think about. Are you interested in hearing another opinion? And that's not to say that I will always categorically disagree with everybody by any means. It just means that I may bring another opinion to the table, and it may not be the same as everybody else's in the first moment. This is obviously something that we have to be very careful with, that I have to be very careful with, because I don't want to be disruptive. I want to be supportive of the school district and the board and the administration. So absolutely, clearly the commitment is there from me personally, and I hold everybody, I ask everybody to call me out if I would ever not be supportive of the sport or the school. Professionalism, respect, integrity and appreciation of each other is very, very important to me. And that is something that I clearly would commit to on this board, even if I would disagree at times with certain things. So building trust would be my first goal in the first 6 months, and probably beyond that if I would get reelected. Building trust with the board members, building trust with the administration, building trust with teachers, with parents. Being approachable is, I think, something that is not always perceived as far as the school board goes. I think it has improved a lot, no doubt about it, and kudos to you for that. But being approachable is key to public office, and you all know that. And Cinda, I'm going to single you out a little bit. You have been very approachable, and really the rest of the board has been too over the last 3 weeks. And you know the exchanges we had. But being approachable in public is just as important, right? Responding to questions in meetings as much as legally possible, and we all know there's legal constraints to that. But answering on the spot questions that the public brings to a meeting. If the public makes an effort to go to the meeting, investing their personal time, coming to a meeting and asking a question or making a comment, it should not go unanswered. That's just some of the things that I would probably want to influence if I were to be part of this team. A big part of being on the school board is understanding what's going on in the schools, and I don't claim I do. I don't claim to know what's going on in the schools. I know there's human resources challenges left and right, I'm sure, and there's safety policies and school policies and educational policies and special needs policies and many policies I probably don't even know that exist. I would not claim I know them. So a big part of my first half year for sure, but probably beyond that would be to just simply listen and learn. That would be a big part of it for sure. Ask questions would probably be a big part as well, because I believe questions allow us to learn, right? And obviously helping navigate those challenges that are in front of us. Like I said, I have a pretty sizable staff that is actively traveling the United States and beyond during times of COVID. So from an HR standpoint, from a safety protocol, PPE standpoint, and state regulations near and far, I believe I have some experience that at least I can understand what you're going through and maybe help navigate here and there. Long-term goals for myself would be to define tangible goals. And I'm not saying they're not there right now, but I believe they could be a little bit more tangible as far as what the school's ranking goes, as far as the budget development over the next couple of years goes. Just a maybe a little bit more managerial approach to managing the school district. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be run as a business. It doesn't mean that at all. But there should be a plan in place in certain areas of the school district's responsibilities. And it should call out timelines and goals, and it should be measured against. That might be ranking again, that might be financial, that might be compliance with policies. It can be a lot of things, right? It can be also staff development, obviously, right? How do we measure how we develop staff, right? Young staff, seasoned staff, right? There's things that we can look at and set goals and measure against those, and then talk about it, right? Do good things and talk about them as a school board, as a school district, as an administration. So those would be my long-term goals, really. Yeah, I think that's enough. There's questions that will probably be interesting to answer.
Okay, Andy, you're up.
Okay. So the budget question. The question I have is, what's your current thoughts on where we're at, what we've done over the last couple of years with the budget and what's in front of us? And in particular, any thoughts that you've got on the challenges given the pandemic and the way we've had to adjust what we as a district have to spend?
I'm going to surprise you because I'm not even so worried about the dollar amount of the budget. Now, taxpayers may not be here. I'd be happy to hear that, but I'm not primarily worried about about the dollar amount of the budget. What I am worried about is how is this money being used? And when I look at, a school district can be cheap, can be expensive, or it can be great and can be not so great. I think taxpayers across the board will have no complaints to pay reasonable taxes for a good, stellar, well-ranked school district. A school district that people are raving about, parents are raving about across the board, right? Where it gets difficult is if the cost per student is average, but the ranking may not be average, right? And we know that Merrimack is seeing a lot of growth over the last couple of years, and it's going to be a challenge to manage that, right? So I believe it's very important that people see the value for what they pay. And making sure that we spend the money in the right areas is more important, in my opinion, than shaving $1 off here and there. Thank you.
Every 15 minutes, we need to do a jog around the room.
I was thinking about that, actually.
Just one way to
So-
control costs. That's
So the other answer is the other question that I'm not sure if you actually asked it, but you asked everybody else is about how COVID does affect the. You did, okay, sorry. To be honest, I'm suspecting the only thing it does, it shifts money from one budget line to another. There will be things that will be a lot more expensive than they used to be, and there will be other areas that will not cost as much money, obviously, just because the presence isn't the same. School trips and field trips, for example, comes to mind is one of the things that I'm remembering has been questioned in whether or not we can do that this year. I can't tell you whether or not it has to shrink, and I'm certainly not, and you're not gonna find one post of myself online that calls for shrinking the budget because of COVID, not one single one. Because first, I wouldn't claim to know. Simple as that. I wouldn't claim to know. And second, I believe it will only shift from one place to another. That being said, yet again, we have to look at where are we good and where are we not so good. So if technology, for example, is a challenge in the school, then we need to look very, very hard and very fast at technology, because I personally think COVID's not going to go away. So we need to look at solutions that are feasible, that are manageable, that are not making things more complicated. And coming back to experiences with other schools and students, when I look at how my kids are, again, struggling right now with VHS, VLAX, and MHS, which all three they're enrolled in, and how complex these tools are, and the different types, different ways to assign things, that one teacher doesn't do it the same way as yet another teacher, that one teacher doesn't update PowerSchool until the last week of a grading period. So you don't get that sense of, you don't get that compass as a student or as a parent. It makes it very, very frustrating, specifically for students, to navigate that. And those are things I would like to go out and ask people about. How are you experiencing this? How is this working for you? What works well, what doesn't work well? And I believe there's a lot of value to ask these questions, not just internally here among the board and the administration, but ask the people out there. Ask your customers, if I want to say that. And I'm not talking about parents, I'm talking about students, right? I'm talking about teachers, obviously, too, right? It's no secret that I have some teachers that actually message me in private and share with me things that they find difficult to deal with. And if they message me, that means somebody's not listening. Somebody's not paying attention to them. Why are they messaging me and asking not to share their name? Right?
Shannon?
Thank you. What district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and/or a parent?
I was thinking about an answer, and I wasn't sure. Are you talking about initiatives that are happening right now that the school is undertaking, or is it initiatives that I think the school or the board should be undertaking?
Could you hear him,
I
Shannon?
think either way would get an answer that would give me some insight.
Okay. I think you heard some of them, actually. Technology, making sure that the school is ready for the next couple of years of COVID. And and really reaching out to the people that should tell us how this is going, and getting feedback, and defining a path forward that addresses that feedback.
Okay. My question, are you, you already answered, I think, the currently serving. So then the next one is, give me an example where you attempted to make a positive change in our schools. Have you proactively reached out, and if not directly with our schools, please give me another example.
So, I think this starts as a parent on a very small scale. So, I know that sometimes there's a communication issue between your student and and their teacher, and just assuming as a parent that it's not necessarily your student that is right and the teacher that is wrong, and then seeking that communication with the teacher and the student collectively and try and find out what is the real issue. That is something that I have done repeatedly over the last couple of years. When I saw my students struggle and being frustrated about a teacher, reaching out to the teacher and asking for their part, for their side of the story, if you want to call it that, right? And asking, how do you perceive my student, or what do you say when my student tells me this, right? Is it a misunderstanding? Is it a misconception? And I found that these are very, very valuable discussions. Every single teacher has been excellent to respond to that. They have recognized things that they could do better, and my student has recognized things that they could do better. So I think it starts on a very small scale. The other part is, and that's a very recent example, and you're gonna probably expect that I bring that forth tonight. You do know that I have a concern with the remote student curriculum versus the on-premise hybrid student curriculum. And Sharon Putney, which I actually only thanked today, I apologize to her that I waited a week to respond to her. I did want to share that quickly. So there's 148 classes or courses that are being offered to hybrid students, and only 83 to remote students. Now, a good deal of them, I actually went through the list, I can totally understand. Multi-cylinder engines, woodworking, band, which funny enough, there is a remote band, which I'm somewhat impressed how you pull that off. But there's classes that require physical presence at the school campus, in the school building. There's no doubt about that. But a 44% reduction of the offered courses, and a lot of them AP and honors, is something I have a concern about, because I feel that those students that are remote are now not giving the same opportunity as those school students that are hybrid. And a lot of the students that are remote because either they or their family have health issues. So we're now putting families and students with health issues in a different category of education. And I think we all don't like that. I believe you don't like that either. But I want to give you examples of 65 classes and courses that are not offered. And one of them is math for college placement. College placement. So why is a math class that can easily be taught, like all the other math classes, a remote class? Especially if it's targeted for college placement. Another one is principles of management. So we're taking a student, probably a senior class, I'm assuming, right, from the sound of it. Now we're taking a student that has management aspirations, and we're taking him out of the ring right there, right, out of the fight. We're taking him out of the fight because he's remoting it. She has a health issue, right? Accounting is another one. Why is accounting remote? Now, one can argue because we need to have access to an ERP software system, okay? Whatever, SAP or whatever you want, Navision, Microsoft, I don't care. But there's no reason to have the student remote. There's no reason to have a remote student not being able to remote into have a virtual machine or have a network access, to a local computer here at school and have them attend that class. So I'm gonna stop right there, but that's something that I believe I brought to your attention. And I'm sure you don't like it either. I'm sure you had constraints that made you make these decisions. But that's an example.
Okay, thank you. Are you all set with yours, or do you have another one?
I have one more.
Okay.
So you being on board on the MVD, you know that there's relationships, and it's sort of like the big three boards in Merrimack. You get the MVD, school board, town council. How do you believe that the school board and town council could work cooperatively together? Things that you've observed or things that you think that you'd like to see occur better within the two bodies?
So one quick comment on that, please. I want it to be understood that MVD is not a tax-financed organization, town organization. So there's clearly a difference there. It's not a tax implicating organization by any means. It's rates, right? Customer rates that are being paid. When I joined the MVD over 2 years ago, there wasn't really a solid relationship between between MVD and town council. It was, respected and amicable, but there wasn't really any coordination too much. There was an occasional report, and when things developed in town, one way or another, they were shared, but that was about it. I'm very thankful that as part of that whole PFAS situation with contamination issues here in town, I actually was the initiator of a small committee that was temporary, but it set the stage for the cooperation we have with the MVD has with the town council nowadays. And several town council members have supported that committee from the first day on and participated in it. And we built a very trustful relationship with the whole town council thanks to that. And over the last 3 years, the town council has and MVD have really aligned on a lot of issues. We're shoulder to shoulder, fighting for the town, taking a position in town about issues that affect both. And I really am very thankful to the town council for that, and I'm very happy about that. Enjoy that immensely. The school board and the town council, from what I understand right now, again, I will have to ask questions about that. What I understand, there is not a whole lot of overlap, right? Because they're, again, separate entities governed by different RSAs. But there need to be discussions had as far as infrastructure planning, traffic flow planning. I believe that our setup out here is not really ideal. I think there could be better solutions than having to have a policeman stand in the middle of the road and get knocked over every so often, which I'm glad that they recovered from that. But I understand that was not the first time a year and a half ago when it happened. So I believe there's some structural planning that the town and the school board, and probably the budget committee also to a certain extent, should communicate with each other, and obviously the administration. And I think there could be synergies, if that was done more often.
Okay, Shannon?
Thank you. How do you see your role as it relates to working with parents that have questions and need to navigate the district with issues they may be facing?
And again, you mean as a school board member, right? Right.
Correct.
Correct.
I believe it is dangerous to speak on certain questions directly to a parent as a school board member, because those answers should be coming from either the school board as an organization collectively, or they should be coming from the administration. It's again probably no secret that I'm pretty active on social media, because I have found prior to running for my MVD office that people were very, very grossly misinformed and very strong opinions formed in the public. And they were also very aggressively voiced, right? And they led to other opinions about people, about what they do, about what they don't do. And I found it's very important to redirect those opinions. That doesn't necessarily mean that as an individual and as a board member, anybody should be out there and just, spewing opinions and internals that the administration may have shared with the board, or in general, and none of that should happen. But what a board member can and maybe should do in today's world is to redirect people to the administration, to the counselor's office, to the principal, to the chair of the board, to the school board website and the addresses, email, and phone numbers, obviously, that are on there, and actually come to a meeting, motivate people to come to a meeting and voice their opinion there. I haven't been to too many school board meetings, mostly because they have been oftentimes during MVD meetings, but there isn't many people at these meetings, and it's not right. Right? These are our kids, these are our schools, and people should be here. If they have a problem, they should be motivated to come here. So.
Okay, and then my last question is, would you have the ability to do committee work, even if it's during the day, sometimes during the hours of 9 to 5, occasionally, not very often, but is that something you'd have the ability to do?
Yeah, so my employer is down in Pennsylvania. I work from home. I travel occasionally for work. I can control that for the most part, unless there's an emergency going on. So I should have no problem attending any daytime or nighttime meetings.
Okay, and I think what's that? Okay, Shannon, do you have any more? Did that cover all yours?
No, my final question is, as a school board member, what are your thoughts on district issues being discussed by school board members on local social media sites?
I apologize.
But you're fine.
That was loud. Sorry about that. So somebody turned this up too. Absolutely, like I said earlier, the school board needs to speak as one voice. So I believe that it is very helpful and necessary nowadays that school board members are approachable by social media. I'm not sure if they have to be on every Merrimack positive, negative, proactive, inactive, soapbox, whatever group, I'm sorry. But I believe they should be approachable, either by social media or in general. Obviously nowadays, with everybody working from home and social distancing, it is harder than ever to speak in person. So yes, I believe that school board members should be reading, at times at least, social media pages. They should be gauging what people say, and they should again take that as feedback and think about it, and maybe either proactively, which you have done a couple of weeks ago about the AP classes and honors classes. I recognize that. Days after this cooked up in the forums, it was presented at the 828 meeting, right? I think it was, where I was at the meeting. So I believe it's very important to be present and show your interest in in social media. I don't think, like I said earlier, that opinions should be voiced in social media, specifically not if they don't represent the board. And even if they do, it should really rather refer to a publication of a prior meeting minute or a video a couple weeks ago of a meeting that was held.
And lastly, do you have any questions of us?
The only thing I can say, I wish you all the best, because none of this is easy right now. It's not easy in general. So whatever you do, you have my support. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Testing, okay. Okay, so I think you know the drill. You could just give us a couple minutes of an introduction on yourself and why you're interested in running.
Sure.
And before you speak, just make sure you see the green light illuminated.
All right. Good evening. My name is Jenny Poisson. I am a prior Air Force officer and disabled veteran. I took my first oath to serve 20 years ago. I left the service in 2019. I've dedicated my entire adult life since I graduated high school to serving, and I would like to continue my service to my local community in this capacity. Over the past 18 years, my husband and I have moved 9 times. My kids are on their 7th location, their 7th school district. So we have a very broad perspective when it comes to school systems. And we have chosen Merrimack as our forever home, so my kids are really excited they don't have to move again. I've certainly seen my share of good practices and bad practices when it comes to school systems. We lived at one time in one of, if not the worst school district in the nation, where we had 30 children in a kindergarten class, 20 desks. So you had to rotate on a day-to-day basis who got to sit on the floor and who got a desk. We also had metal detectors installed in our middle school and in our high school because we had issues with guns and weapons coming into the school since we had a lot of gang violence in the area. Kind of one of those, apple didn't fall far from the tree sort of scenarios. My solution to that problem was to create my own accredited private school. I developed and chose the curriculum. I hired teachers and adhered to all of the state standards. So I do have although on a much smaller scale, some experience in running a school system. Shifting back to my career experience, I have over 2 decades in leading high-performing teams with proven results, both nationally and internationally recognized. And throughout my career, I've had to make critical decisions based on data. So I'm very data-driven person when it comes to decision-making versus emotional. And then I provided you with my really lengthy resume, but there's just one more thing I want to highlight. In one of the schools that I attended, which I think is very relevant to the situation we're in now, is called Advanced Joint and Combined Warfare School. The title is very misleading. It's a 1-year grueling course, takes place in Norfolk, Virginia. And it focuses on contingency operations and contingency planning. So it's not just focused on warfare. So from the Department of Defense perspective, very little of our operations and planning is actually war. We do what we call MUTWA, which is military operations other than war, which includes a lot of humanitarian efforts, a lot of disaster relief type efforts. So within this school, we did a lot of developing coordinated responses with government agencies, non-government agencies, like USAID and Red Cross, and our international partners. One of the plans that I worked on was the United States education plan to sub-Saharan Africa. So that's where we're going to cities and towns that had no schools whatsoever, and creating a plan to create the infrastructure and an entire school system for those countries. So most people are like, well, what the heck is the DoD doing that, right? So if you look at a lot of these locations, and I think it could somewhat be relevant to Merrimack as well. If you have a good, strong school system and you're able to develop youth that have options when they graduate, right? So they have options to go out and do something with their life. So these school systems, or non-existent school systems in Africa, they are hotbeds for attracting terrorist recruiting, a lot of drug problems and stuff like that. So the DoD is involved so we can give those kids a better chance to do something else and then overall make the world more secure. So how is that relevant here, right? So I'm interested in bringing a lot of that contingency planning as it relates to the situation we're in now. But I'm also interested in not just my students, but the children in my community, making sure that they have a strong future and options beyond high school, so that they can become productive citizens in our community. Overall, I think my experience lends itself well to current operating conditions, and I really appreciate your consideration for this position.
Thank you so much. Andy?
So I apologize if it wasn't. Can I speak? Okay. You're trying to wake me up one way or the other tonight. So how long have you lived in Merrimack? Just curious.
3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yep.
In context is important because my first question is around budget. So because you've been around through a few cycles of taxes and stuff, I'm curious of what your thoughts are around the way our budget currently is around the school system and where you see challenges from your perspective might be as we navigate through this change in the way that we teach and educate because of the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think overall our budget is appropriate the way it is now. I have a lot of experience in working with budgets. In one of my jobs, I was in charge of a $5.3 billion space program and was able to find $47 million savings per launch across 34 satellites. So multiply 34, it's a big number. So without sacrificing capability to the warfighters. So I'm very much, hey, let's get the most for the money that we have. And in terms of responding to the new requirements kind of forced upon us, I'm used to kind of, being able to flex and pivot with budgets. But I certainly have some ideas that I'm working on, which will actually answer your question too. So I don't know if you want me to wait or I can do a 2-for-1. But I do have some ideas that will help out with the remote learning that are zero cost.
Okay, Shannon?
Thank you very much. And my first question is, what district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and or a parent?
Well, there's a lot of issues that I believe in. Some that were already mentioned before. I'm very interested in social and emotional trauma. I've certainly seen a lot of things that most people haven't seen. I've had a lot of personal experience with trauma, different type of trauma. But I certainly understand from a personal level what these kids may be going through. And I understand that certain situations that might be not traumatic for one individual may be extremely traumatic to someone else. And then I also, one of my master's degrees is in psychology. So I think I have both the academic background and the personal background to have some positive impact there. I'm also concerned with accessibility of our online systems. And that kind of feeds out to some of the budget and what I'm doing about it sort of thing. But there are a lot of things that we can do to our existing system to make it accessible to students, not only students with disabilities, but to all students, so they can work a little bit more independently at home, and we can help buy down some of the burden to parents that are trying to manage working at home and children or multiple children working at the same time. I've also done a lot of research on the Canvas system that we're going to implement. And there's certain things that we can do that are already included in the software. There's certain settings and modifications, and there's certain things that teachers can do as they build their pages in order to make it more accessible to all students. And then finally, one of the things I'm also interested is in the budget. I gave you one example already, but like across my career, I've always been, hey, here's your operating budget, make it work. I've also had times where they've come in and stripped money from my budget and have the expectation of maintaining the same level of performance and capabilities. And you have to kind of make it work and do a very good analysis, not just on the budget, but on the service that we're providing and how we can get the most out of what's already in our toolbox.
And then my question is, are you currently serving in an elected role or community leadership position? And if so, do you plan to continue in this or these roles should you be appointed?
I am not currently serving in any position.
Okay. Andy?
So I've asked this before, but there's another governing body in town, the town council, that does this, the town side and the infrastructure side of the town. Do you see, have you noticed any interactions between or how they work together? And do you see any ideas that you might have on how the two governing bodies could work together more collaboratively?
Yeah, I find that whenever you have two separate entities that need to collaborate together, you have the same general positive end goal. But I feel like, a lot of times it's what I call in like the bro network. So it's like reliant on personal relationships. But for my practice, what I do is I create an official collaboration agreement. So this is, here's a relationship, here's a communication plan, how often we're going to communicate, how we're going to communicate, and what they would expect from us, what we expect from you, and make it more of a formalized agreement, because if somebody were to depart the board that had that relationship, you still have that official communication, and that goodness doesn't die with somebody departing.
Okay. Shannon?
Thank you very much. And how do you see your role as it relates to working with parents that have questions, need to kind of navigate the district about issues they're facing?
Can you repeat that?
For sure. So how do you see your role as a school board member? How do you see that role as it relates to working with parents who may have questions about district issues? So, they're trying to navigate the district, for issues that they're experiencing.
Was that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got it. Thank you. I would see my role as not, I don't want to say not answering the question, but if they have questions about the district, certainly I will, or comments or gripes, of course, I'll listen, but I'm not there to answer for the school board. And I'm certainly not there to answer for, Dr. McLaughlin or any of our school administrators. So I could certainly point them in the right direction, or if there's also already official correspondence in regard to their question, I can point them to that. But I don't view it as my job to, and I believe it's in the policy not to do that.
Thank you. Please give me an example where you attempted to make a positive change in our schools. So have you proactively reached out perhaps to a teacher or an administrator, school board member? And if not with our schools, give me another example where you advocated and were proactive about something that was important to you.
Okay, so every school district that we've been in, including this one, I participate in the career days to motivate kids to pursue science and technologies. My job is non-traditional, so a lot of them don't know it exists. So it kind of opens a few more eyes to different career possibilities. Additionally, I am involved in Girls in STEM, and I regularly judge at universities for technical competitions that they have. I'm slated to judge another one at NYU within the next month or so. On top of that, more recently, so one of my children are special needs, and I was having issues at home where I'm trying to work, and Mom, can you help me? Mom, can you read this to me? Pretty nonstop. And I'm trying to work, and I can't imagine like parents that have multiple children in that scenario, whether it's someone with special needs or if it's just a young kindergartner or first grader that just needs more help navigating. So I actually went through and I thought about, well, how can I empower not just my student, but all the students to work a little bit more independently with the system that we have. So I went through and made a lot of different modifications to my daughter's computer, both at the hardware and software level. I downloaded a special font for her. She's dyslexic, so I downloaded the free font. I integrated that into the Microsoft products. I also integrated it into her web browser, so every single page turns to her special font so she can read it. And then it's just little things like, hey, if you open Microsoft Edge, if you highlight the text and right click, there's a read aloud option. And it will read the entire web page to you. And it doesn't sound like a robot. There's other free things like Microsoft Lens, like you can snap a photo of anything, your homework, that maybe it's difficult for you to read. You can take a snapshot of it, and then it translates it and it reads it aloud to you. And then I just have like a whole long list of things, and I actually captured all of this, and I'm about 90% done of writing step-by-step instructions on all of these things that parents or teachers can teach their students how to do, so that they can work a little bit more independently. I think it would be a savior for a lot of parents. It doesn't cost any money. It's already hidden there that you can implement it for free. And certainly I think it would make a lot of people's lives at home a lot easier. I know it's made my life a lot easier, and I'm not the type of person that just finds something great and keeps it to myself. If I think it can help the community, then I go for it. So I did talk to some of the special needs folks about it. They're like, oh, this is awesome. So I'm going to be sending that to them by the end of the week, and I plan to send it to you as well. And then additionally, I have gone into the new Canvas software to look at a similar type thing. There's a lot of universities that have implemented it, and there's a lot of great research out there on how you use it to make it easier and more accessible. Most of the literature is aimed towards people with disabilities, but I see it as applicable to a lot of like the young school children as well, and making it easier for all of our students.
Thank you. Back to you, Andy.
So, sort of a fairly short question. So, as you know, this is a 6-month sort of appointment, where then an election would happen in April. Would it be your intent just to do it for 6 months, or would your intent, if you got into it, that you would like to continue and go into a full election and things like that?
My focus is doing what I can now, and lending my skills and my background to getting us through and helping us work as a team to get us through this uncharted territory. I think my skills lend themselves well. At this point in time, I don't have an intent to run, but I certainly wouldn't like completely cross it off. It's kind of a, you know, I'm going to cross that bridge when I get to it. I've never been one to, you know, hey, I want to do this so I can, you know, get to the next level or get a promotion. You know, I'm that type of person that I 100% dedicate myself to a job. I do the best that I can in the job that I'm given, and, you know, the chips kind of fall where they fall.
Shannon?
Thank you. And then, what are your thoughts on district issues being discussed by school board members on local social media sites?
I do not think it's appropriate on social media. I don't consider social media as a official form of communication. Now, if someone wants to like reach out and says, hey, I have this issue, that's fine, but we shouldn't be you know, corresponding back other than an acknowledgement of receipt, just because it's polite. But I'll look at social media just to kind of gauge different stakeholder perspective, realizing that people usually only post when they're angry or upset, not when they're really happy. And so it's just one small data point. Sort of, it at least gives us insight into how school board decisions are perceived by some parents. And it can give us some insight on, you know, maybe how we can improve some of our communications to the parents.
Okay. And then my last question is, are you able to participate in committee work if it were during the day or, you know, other evenings other than just regular school board meetings?
I am. I've been given full permission by my employer, and they fully support, and I have complete control over my own schedule.
Okay, great. Thanks. Did you have anything else, Andy? Shannon?
I think I've got 3 covered.
Okay. Do you have any questions for us?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And thank you. And Paul Bienis.
I think everybody said everything, so I should just leave. And if I doze off while I'm talking, it's really buttoned up against my bedtime. So, so my name is Carl Bienis. I've lived in town for 22 years. I've had 2 kids matriculate through the whole system. My oldest son is a sophomore at UConn, and my youngest son is a senior now at the high school. So, so really, I have no, other than tax rate, I have no vested interest in the actual classroom anymore. Really, the reason I'm here is my philosophy, like parenting, the school system should produce young adults that have a positive influence on society. That's what I'm looking for, right? And just because we're doing a good job doesn't mean we can't do a better job, okay? And we are lower ranked than a lot of our abutting towns, and I like to see us improve, just get better. And I'm just here to volunteer my time to try and do that. Obviously, I have 2 kids. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in material science and engineering from WPI. So I am a science-oriented person. I'm a factual person. I'm a data-driven person. I usually will not make a decision without all the facts that I can achieve. But also, if there's no data, it doesn't mean it's also bad data, right? I deal with what I have, you do a risk assessment, and you make a decision at that time. I've worked as an engineer for the past 30 plus years. I work on groups and committees all the time on a daily basis because you don't produce products for the war fighter or anybody like that, because that's the stuff I work on. I work on cellular, I work on everything, without a team putting it together to put it out, right? Other than that, I don't have a lot to say about myself. I'm just here to put myself out and help out. Like I said, I have kids that have gone all the way through the system. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and truthfully, we haven't seen a lot of bad. I mean, my kids have always are high achievers, high in the class ranks, and I've always taught them, even from a young age, if you have an issue with a teacher, with a grade, with what's going on, you know what? In life, you have to deal with it yourself. You know what? And the first thing you do is be polite, be respectful, and talk to the teacher yourself, right? And I'm not going to get involved in that until it's not resolvable. Other than that, that's me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Andy?
Okay, so you probably know my drill now for a while. So
Right.
you talked about tax rate. So obviously, what are your thoughts about the way the budget is within the schools, and how do you think that the reaction should be to the COVID in terms of how we change how we approach things?
Yeah, so obviously I don't love my tax rate. I would like it to be zero, but that's, you have to do budgets with a moral compass, right? You can't cut 1,000, all the teachers because you would save money, right? You have to do it with a moral compass. I think we need to be forward thinking with our budget now, right? This is actually given us an opportunity, right? There should never be another snow day in Merrimack, right? We should be forward thinking and looking at a 3-year plan and a 5-year plan to how we make this better and be leading edge. I'm sorry, I want to be forward thinking. I want to be innovative. I want the people that come out of the school to be innovative and forward thinking. Whether you're going to college, whether you're just not going to college, we should teach these kids to be forward thinking, cutting edge, and press on what they do. So obviously I'd like my taxes to be zero, but that's not possible. But I think as we're putting into this, I think there's companies in town that, like Connection, that do integration and with the school systems, and we need to partner and be forward thinking and put all this technology into our system in case this prolongs and get to the edge, right? And if it doesn't, then we're at the top of the heap, right? We need to bring ourselves up. That's what I believe.
Shannon?
Thank you. What district initiatives are most important to you as a taxpayer and/or a parent? I think you hit on some of it, but if there's something else you want to share, I'll open it up for that.
Right, and everybody's talking about the emotional, and I agree with that. I mean, to put it out there, I'm a coach at a varsity level right now at the school. So we have almost 90 players on our team. And so with 1,200 kids in the school, I actually interact with almost 10% of the school every single day, right? But I can tell you for the last 6 months, I've been on 1,000 Zoom meetings trying to get these kids out of bed, trying to get them moving, trying to do the things they're supposed to do to be somewhat normal again, right? So, so I think one of the biggest things, to tell you the truth, is, and I'm thinking of a good way to say it, other than the way I normally say it, is the kids graduating now, especially at the higher levels, they're behind the 8 ball right now, right? They're not going to graduate with the same skill level and knowledge that the kids did 2 years ago and 3 years ago. And when they hit college or trade school or whatever, they're not going to be as good as the kids are a couple of years ago. And the 6th graders moving into 7th grade. I mean, I think we need to focus on trying to recoup and bring our kids back up. They need to get to the level that they needed to be. right? If they take the same AP test, if my senior takes the same AP test as my sophomore in college right now, he's not going to do the same thing. And we need to shorten that gap. We really do. And figure out how, right? And it may be innovative thinking. It may be different thinking, but we need to close that gap.
Thank you. And then, are you serving on as an elected role or community leadership? And then if so, would you plan to continue in this, with this role if you should be appointed?
So no, I'm not elected, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to you, Andy.
So my town council question, do you have any thoughts on the two bodies working collaboratively together for the issues that come out?
So I've been sitting in the back listening to this for a while, and I actually can't believe that the two groups don't have a liaison or aren't working together. How can you have a board that puts more apartments and more people in the town and creates a higher volume for the school system in population, and they don't talk? And I'm assuming they don't talk by the question, right? It may not be true, but I don't understand how that happens in a town that's this small, right? And maybe I'm not answering the question right, but obviously I am shocked that there isn't a liaison to talk about those type of things. So I think they should be working together. I think all the groups in a small town like this should be working together to maximize what we have, right? We don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of size, but we need to maximize things.
Since I've asked this of everybody, I had no hidden agenda by asking this question, except that as a board member for a while now, I've always been amazed at the lack of frequency that the boards meet together to talk face to face about these things. We do get information periodically about development within the town and stuff, and there's numbers floating on the number of students per apartment and things, but we never talk about it that much. And so I'm curious to see other people's impression of the way that the boards work together in
So
town.
I'm shocked at the whole thing, really.
All right, Shannon.
Thank you. So how do you see your role as it relates to working with parents that have questions about district issues? And I am going to call you a bit because you disclosed one thing, that you're a coach of our students, which I didn't know that before now. So with that being considered, you're going to have access to a lot of parents. And I think it's probably, I'm very interested in hearing how, if you were on the board, how you would address this, knowing you have a role, a leadership role within our district.
So I guess, if you haven't told, I'm a football coach, okay? And
I'm a band parent. I've been to more football games than you can count, but thanks.
But so I will teach it. I would treat it exactly like football, and it's the same. You know what? If you want to tell me, if you want to talk to me about your students' grades and how things are going, that's great, because we have study halls all the time. We do grade checks. We make sure these kids are trying to work the best that they can. But if you want to talk football, we don't have it, right? We are the coaching staff, and we will coach football. If a parent comes up to me and I'm on a school board, the school board is one unit, right, as I see it. I may not agree with you, and I may not agree with you. I may not agree with anybody. And as we discuss it and fight it out, whatever we decide as a group and a board, that's the policy. So if somebody wants to, I'm trying to keep we're on TV, right, so I can't make bad language, but if somebody wants to just complain about it, I'm not going to listen to it, and I'm not going to answer it. And for the second question of the online and social media, I'm also not going to take the bait, right? You can't take the bait because it just makes you mad, right? And then you just want to lash out, and that's usually not you. It's usually not them. It turns you into different people. So I'm not taking the bait on social media. I'm not answering questions on social media, and I'm not answering questions that should be addressed to the board or somebody else. I just don't agree with it. So, and I'm not wishy-washy about it. And you can tell by my personality, I'm not wishy-washy about anything, really. And I'm not afraid to make the hard decisions. And it is what it is. And you'll get an opinion from me pretty much everything everything we talk about.
Okay, well, speaking of opinions or advocating, I would say, would you give me an example of where you attempted to make a positive change in our schools? Have you proactively reached out? And if not directly with our schools, please give me another example.
So to tell you the truth, teaching my kids to be independent and talk to their teachers like adults at a very young age, I think is a positive influence on the classroom and the schools. Having correct contact with almost 10% of the population in this high school, and I've been coaching in town. So my kids, I've been coaching in town for 20 plus years before I ever had kids, right when I moved to town. So I've always tried to make a positive influence on the young adults in this town at whatever age. And I think this would just, go to the next level.
Back to you, Andy.
So if you're appointed for this sort of 6-month period, do you believe that it's something that you would want to run again in the spring or just to do for 6 months? What's sort of your current thinking?
It matters if I'm doing any good. If I'm not doing any good, if I don't think what I bring to the table does anything, I wouldn't run again, because I would want somebody in that seat. The reason I'm here is to make sure somebody who, well, not that seat because that's taken, but that seat is taken up by somebody who is positive, wants to push forward, has the school system in mind, and has no hidden agenda. That's why I'm here. So I've listened to the candidates. I think there's a lot of great candidates. And if I don't get it, I'm happy with the candidates that came here. That's why I'm here to help. And I'm here to fill a spot that I wanted to make sure, it's very important to this town that it's filled properly. That's it. So like I said, if I'm not good at it, I'm going to give way to somebody else. If I think I am good at it, then I'll run again.
Okay, I think we're Shannon.
Well, you answered my social media question, so I think we're covered.
And then I guess I just have the last one, which is, are you able to work on committee assignments that might take place during the day? And do you understand that there's committee assignments that go with the position that could be anywhere from contract negotiation, there's curriculum, budget committee, parks and rec. We basically divide them all up. Sorry.
With enough advance, I'm working from home too, obviously. I believe even after things go off, I'll still be working at home. So I can set my schedule accordingly. And obviously I would figure all parties would try and make their calendars available to each other. So I would say yes, but it's probably not going to be at the drop of a hat. It'll be with advance notice.
Yep. And I can say too, I work from home and remotely, and most of the time I can accommodate it, but every now and then there is a fire drill, and that's just life, and
Right.
so on and so forth. So, okay, I think that ends all of our questions. Did you have anything that you wanted to ask us?
No, not really.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. First of all, I would say thanks to all of the candidates that are here, and I echo your comments, Mr. Bienis, that there's so many qualified people, and I've really been just really excited about the things that you've all have said and about the various backgrounds that people bring to the table. And more importantly, I think the ability to want to participate and make our school district better. And I heard some of those themes loud and clear, including desires for innovation. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time to put your name in the hat, coming out, and of course spending a pretty long evening here as well. So with that, we're on to the next item, which is to appoint the candidate to fill the school board member position. So I will open it up to my fellow board members, Andy and Shannon.
Cinda, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jenna Hardy to fill the school board position until April.
Okay, I'll second that.
I will tell you, if I could speak to my motion, the things that she hit on, and it was the top 3 thing, she talked about social emotional learning, but she also talked about she understood the history of it, which means that there's definitely a plug into what we're doing, where we're going, and I think that's going to be very important going into this year because, that means that we have someone that that probably has been at least following to some extent pretty closely, what we're trying to do and what we're facing on a regular basis. But just knowing how important that is to delivering that education also, she made that very clear. She really brought up communications and how it focused on safety. And that hit as well. And that, for me, is something as, when we talk about the board code of ethics that we sign every year, it's all about, making sure that we're serving the students first. And those are two paramount things right now to be able to do that. So in talking about safety being a priority. And then finally, I think her example on the turf. And so she talked about how, when the voters declined, voting in favor of the turf, that it's all about the will of the voters, taking it gracefully, hearing what they have to say, and respecting their wishes. And I think that, the second part of our code of ethics is keeping the taxpayer in mind. And she did all of that in her answers. And that's what really got me looking at Jenna as a great choice to join the board at least until April.
Do you have any comments?
So,
Go ahead.
oh, I didn't.
Andy?
So this is extremely hard, and I want to sit and talk for a couple of minutes, so sit back and relax and things. First of all, this is the third time now that I've been on a board that's had to interview a candidate to fill in somebody that's resigned. The first couple of times it was 2 people each time that reached out that showed interest. This time we had 8, of which 6 came to talk about this. And in a heartbeat, I would consider every single one that came tonight for different reasons, because you've got people that have come from all different backgrounds, from all different points of interest, people that had students a long time ago, people that currently have students, all have a vested interest in this. I didn't hear anybody come in and say, cut the budget by a significant amount of money, which I like to see, not because I don't think there's economies, but because that's not how I think you should walk in the door when you start talking about the schools. There is knowledge that everybody has. I could sit and point at every person and say, I want a piece of this, I want a piece of this, I want a piece of this, to build into all of us, because there's a huge amount of knowledge. And that when we hit the election in April or whenever it might be, God only knows, I want everybody to consider putting your name out to do this, because I've been on this for a while and I had no real background in education. I was a guy who was a parent who volunteered in sports and worked in industry, but wanted to get involved to make a difference. I'll also say that budget committee is a really good place to also be, because that's how you learn how the budget's put together. You look over the shoulder of the school board, as well as going out on your own in the budget committee to understand how it is. So I was a proponent to keep the budget committee when they tried to chop it, 5-6 years ago. I think it has value. So if you're a person that's not chosen tonight, at the next election, or if there's another opening for the budget committee, that's another place to look, because you learn a whole lot when you do that there. If up to me, I might have nominated a couple other names for consideration, given the fact we're looking at this only for a short term, because there are challenges we're going to need, both from a financial standpoint, from a collaborative standpoint, all different points of view. But I've got a impression, given the fact that Jenna's name was brought out so strongly up at the beginning, curious to hear, Cinda, what you have to say. But I just wanted to sort of talk through this, because if I had my way, I would have talked for probably half an hour to an hour with each person and asked other questions. But what you saw tonight, because of the volume of candidate, was a little bit like speed dating, because we had to pick a handful of questions. But there's a whole lot more that I would have asked. But given the constraints, that's where we are. So.
So a couple things. I will support the motion. And one of the reasons I will support the motion is in hearing what Jenna Hardy had said with her children in so many different of our schools right now, also gives her that perspective of, I'm trying to look at it from where's the learning curve going to be the least. And so that's kind of one of my motivations for filling this on the short-term basis. So I would support on that way. The other thing I'd like to say is I got really excited hearing some of the other ideas that I heard. And for the folks that came out, every single one, I mean, if any of you are open to it, I would love to have a cup of coffee, socially distanced, or, you know, whatever safe and comfortable, to really find out more about some of the things that you were talking about. So, you know, for example, Wolfram, you've got ideas on ways to be efficient. You've got, thoughts on maybe not always what's popular, or some of the goals that could be tracked and measured more carefully. And I think, Paul, you just came across no nonsense. You want to get things, Carl, you just came across no nonsense, want to, have a lot to offer in the way of being essentially data-driven and, not afraid to make a decision, some of those ideas of your experience. And then, of course, the value of Paul Goodridge, of having the history of the school district and kind of how we came to where we are now. And then Jenny, very, very impressed, I think, with your very systematic and some of the methodologies that you've incorporated into your work, as well as your understanding of budgetary processes, and also some of the innovative things around technology that you brought up. So all of those things I'm interested in finding out more about, if any of you will allow me to. But I would, those are just kind of my thoughts, and I intend to support the motion that's on the table. Anything else? Do you want to take a vote?
Hi, this is Shannon. If I would just say yes. The one thing I wanted to do is kind of really frame my motion so that it was clear. But I'm very appreciative of the other candidates, the time they brought, the ideas they brought, and they're always welcome. And I think that's so important to understand. Just because whatever tonight brings, those opinions are always welcome at our table. And we invite you, to get more involved. And there are definitely openings, in the district, with budget committee every year. And you're right, it's a big committee, so they do have openings every year during election time as well. So, but there's always opportunity to serve the district in many ways, and even we have Coach Bunnis who already does it. We definitely appreciate the passion you have for the Merrimack School District. And I just wanted to say that before we take our votes as well.
Are we ready to go ahead and take a vote? Okay, so Board Member Shannon Barnes moved, seconded by myself, to nominate Jenna Hardy to fill the vacancy for the school board position. So Vice Chair Barnes, how do you vote?
In favor.
Board Member Schneider, how do you vote?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. The motion passed 3-0. What I count, one is an abstain. 3-0. So recluse just takes it off the table. Okay, 3-0. All right. Thank you and good night.
Well,
I'm sorry.
also,
Motion to, do I need a, no, I don't need
No,
it.
I just want to say that what this means, remember I said earlier about budget committee. I believe this means there's going to be an opening in the budget committee. So Chairman Moore over there is going to be busy trying to figure this out again. So that'd be an opportunity if somebody wants to participate. That's an opportunity that'll be coming. So.
Okay. And I don't think we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Motion to, do we need one? Okay, motion to adjourn, second by Andy. Motion to adjourn, Board Member Shannon Barnes moved, seconded by Board Member Schneider to adjourn. Vice Chair Barnes, how do you vote?
In favor.
Board Member Schneider, how do you vote?
Yep.
In favor. The chair votes in favor. The motion passed 3-0. Thank you and good night.